Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our Wednesday night craft beer tasting. Tonight's topic is Situation Brewing out of Edmonton, one of the foundational craft breweries of the new wave of Alberta craft breweries. I'm joined tonight by Curtis Weber of Situation Brewing. Good evening, Curtis.
Good evening, everyone.
Can you see me now, Curtis?
Yeah, I can see
Okay,
you.
we are good to go then. So we have got 4 beers in front of us. Is it one core and 3 seasonals, or is the Extrovert a core beer?
The Extrovert is a core beer, yes.
Okay, so let's start with the core beer. Let's jump straight into the Extrovert Red Ale.
All right.
Now, I did kind of talk about you as being one of the foundational breweries of kind of what I consider the cool wave or the interesting wave, because I don't count Big Rock, because they don't count. So let's talk a little bit about kind of where the beer industry was in 2016, where Situation was, and how you folks got started, and where you are today.
Okay. So our founder, Wayne Sheridan, was kind of an avid home brewer in the late 2010s to 2014. And he was a partial owner of a engineering company, and kind of found himself in 2014 like starting to be moving out of that business. So his home brewing days like got more and more serious, and then the rules, the province started talking about changing the rules for how much was the minimum for a microbrewery, and he started to do the research and a business plan, and thought that after doing some research in Oregon and Washington, Wisconsin, he decided that the best plan for him was he wanted to have like a hub for the community to kind of get together. So he needed to open somewhere close to where beer drinkers were. So if you're familiar with Edmonton, White Avenue is kind of like our entertainment district. It's been around like since forever in Old Strathcona, and so to open up in Old Strathcona had all the beer drinkers here. So he wanted as big of a tap room as possible. So we opened 150, 140 seat restaurant because the city said you couldn't just have a beer hall. So it turned into a big kind of brew house, and we opened in 2016. The first like in Edmonton around the change.
Which is wonderful, yeah, because I'm thinking of 2016, it'd be you folks, Blind Man. I don't think there's anyone else really from the 2016 round that's really still super of interest to me.
There was a couple like little players around, but most of them are gone. I think like Amber's was maybe around then.
Oh man, I forgot Amber's was a thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the beer wasn't really anything to talk about too much, so we'll just leave Amber's where it was.
Yeah, we can leave it. Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah.
So obviously, fast forwarded to COVID, and we'll maybe cover this a little later, but going all into like serving everything on site versus selling package sales, I imagine things have changed just a touch for you that way.
Yeah, exactly. So the first year or so, we really focused on building our tap room and building the beers for our tap room, and then producing enough beer that we could service like a small community of bars and restaurants in Edmonton, right? Delivering sort of the freshest beer possible in kegs.
Yep.
And then I kind of came on the scene a year and a half, 2 years later, and we started talking about bringing the brewery, like we were sort of stable at sales, like far as like 60-70% of our capacity. So we started talking about how can we bring that capacity closer to 100%. And so that's when we started entertaining the idea of packaged product, which we didn't really start coincidentally till January of 2020.
Oh wow! Well, that's good timing.
Yeah, very fortunate for us.
Well, I like the packaging. We've done a couple of Situation beers on the channel. We've done the Afternoon Tea Saison, and I feel like very early on we might have done the Page Turner IPA, but I'm not going to go back through 50 different beer tastings to find out for absolute certain. That's an awful and thankless task, and we're going to taste it in 2 beers anyway. So I don't have to go looking back. But let's talk about the beer in front of us. This is the Extrovert Red Ale, a style I really like, and one that we've never had on the channel, but two, people come in and they ask like an amber or a red, and even in our shop where like I get to pick the beer selection, I'm sometimes left like grasping at straws a little. It's like, I mean, have you tried Kilkenny? Which is a terrible answer. Tell us a little bit about the Extrovert, where it came from. Was it part of the core range at launch? And what do you, where do you enter in on the Extrovert Red Ale?
Yeah, the Extrovert Red was one of the first beers that we put out, and was a core beer for a long time. And then we kind of took it off for a little bit, just to like make room for more like other interesting things. But it's kind of an interesting style because some people think of any red ale as Rickard's Red.
That sounds like
so
a horrible.
It doesn't get a lot of traction. But
okay, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes it doesn't get a lot of traction, right? But where it always shines is in a tap room, like in our tap room and other bars in Edmonton. It's a staple on a lot of places' tap list, right? It's very easy, but it's malty and has a little bit of that fresh hop on the finish.
Well, that's a question that I don't think I've really asked so far, even across the last year. Do you want to talk a little bit about a beer that you kind of designed for a tap room as something that would be mostly on draft, and hey, if we sell some retail, great, versus a beer that you kind of design as a retail sale, and if we sell some draft, cool? Is there a conscious thought process that goes into that right from the start, or does it just kind of work out that way later?
It's both. It's both. Sometimes we have enough forethought. Like in the Extrovert's case, we knew that it may not have a lot of traction in stores because we didn't know what demand is for like a red ale. It's not like the latest and greatest style. It's not a hazy milkshake something, right? So it's really designed for tap rooms, and because of the pandemic, we decided, okay, well, every beer that we produce, we're just going to start putting a small amount of packaged product in to connect and start moving it elsewhere, and then we can kind of test the market.
That's fair. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And okay, so let's talk a little bit about reds. Versus an amber ale, I would expect an amber to have maybe a little more smoke to it because smoked malt in amber is very common. I might expect a little more of a hoppy bite out of an amber, but this is so beautiful. And then the malt, rather than just being very cereal, I'm getting such pretty like red fruit berry characters from the maltiness. Do you want to speak to how you get that fruit character just out of the malt, and kind of red ales as a style? Where did they come from, and how did kind of the situation come around to this style as being a beer that they wanted to do?
Well, we wanted a more traditional Irish red ale instead of an amber ale, and what we really wanted to do is showcase like the bright fruity notes of some of the roasted malt, and also add a little bit of late addition hops to give you like just a little bit of that aroma, right? It's just a fresher take on a red ale instead of amber.
I love that. Yeah, I like that it's a very traditional thing. So we have the Extrovert and we have the page turner in the core range. What else makes up the core range for Situation?
The Extrovert, the red ale, the Afternooner Tea Saison, which you mentioned before, is a core beer, but we changed the tea/fruit addition to it. A couple times a year.
That's
sometimes twice, sometimes 3 times. Yeah. Also, we have the Billiken Blonde, which is not in packaged products. That's just in our tap room and locally. It's a hybrid blonde ale.
So what's a hybrid blonde ale?
It's an ale that we brew more like a lager, but with ale yeast. So spends more time at cold temperatures.
So
and we
like
use
a California Common or a Kolsch sort of style.
Yeah, and and in the grain bill we used a little bit more rice than is traditionally used, because it was first sort of designed with a Japanese restaurant group here in Edmonton in mind, and then now we use it all over the place.
Nice. Just gonna check for some questions here. Oh wow, Chris,
we
Chris
also have like on
2
our
hours
standard
around
lineup.
Calgary to get this beer, so that's awesome.
Yeah, it's we also in our standard lineup is the WTF series, so that's the wild type fermented, and today you have the salty Señorita. So that's another one like the Afternooner that we change the additions a few times a year, right? And this one happens to be like you have both the salty Señorita and the berry white sour are packaged at the same time.
Oh, nice. Well, I'm not going to ignore a good seg like that, so let's move right into the salty Señorita.
All right.
Now, I notice you're drinking coffee. Do you have plans tonight, or you don't drink on camera, or you're just nervous?
Oh, I'm nervous, and but that's not why I'm drinking it. And it's not. It's just water. It's kind of it's like a talk show host trick.
Yeah. Okay.
You drink in a mug, and you don't know what I'm drinking.
Fair enough. Well, we know it's water now. You could have said anything, really, but...
Yeah. It's whiskey, too.
Well, that's fair. I wouldn't judge you, and on Friday night, we're going to have a co-host that will be drinking whiskey, so we're doing whiskey tasting.
Sweet.
So, yeah, salty Señorita. This is not a style that I knew before last year, but we've had a few of these kind of tequila lime styles starting to come through the market. I really like them, and I think this is perfectly timed just as the weather's starting to warm up. Well, at least it is down here. I don't know if it is in Edmonton yet, but it's starting to get proper warm down here.
Yeah, it's definitely starting to warm up here.
All right, so let's talk about the salty Señorita.
So the WTF series is a kettle sour, right? And for the salty Señorita in particular, it's a goza, so we add the addition of salt. But for the salty Señorita, we add a ton of lime zest and a little bit of lime juice and a bunch of tequila. And you generally don't even taste the tequila. Maybe just like a little bit of woodiness on the finish. But the lime zest...
I'd take a little bit of agave prettiness in the nose too, actually. Almost more like a mezcal than a tequila. It's very subtle, but I think it is there.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were saying more that I cut you off very rudely. Please finish.
That's okay. Yeah, so the salty Señorita, it finishes like very dry because it's the sour, right? It's 3.7%. You kind of stop the souring process when you get the pH that you feel like. So we didn't want it super tart, but we also didn't want to produce a sour that's like juicy. It's not meant to be like a ready to drink cocktail in a can. It's a beer.
Yeah, the RTD category has its own thing, and it's almost universally terrible. I really don't ever want a White Claw, but I very much appreciate this for its merits and the fact that it's still beer based. And I've been doing this long enough. I can still remember, beer based cocktails like Zima and that sort of thing.
Oh, Zima, yeah.
Which
I haven't heard that name in a long time.
It's been a bit, yeah. But this is, nothing to do with that. But there is
no.
Yeah, it's nice that we're well away from that market ever existing again. God, I hope so. Unless the Alberta government gives beer-based coolers a huge tax break like they do in the U.S., which would be a terrible, terrible thing.
Yeah, I would agree.
So what else?
So what do you think of that one?
I love this style just in general. I mean, I've really come full circle on sours in the last 12 months. I mean, I've learned a ton doing one of these every single week for a year, just talking to brewmasters and sales directors and talking to people in the brewing industry and just asking questions and absorbing it. And I remember all the things we talk about for the first 3 beers, and I usually have to watch the video to learn what I learned about the 4th beer.
Yes.
And then there was all the things tasting, which we don't talk about. But really, I've really come full circle on sours. I used to think it was, fun, and I appreciated them, but it wasn't something I'd ever buy for myself. And I got it, but it wasn't for me. And then as this has gone along, sours have become more and more and more something that I enjoy. And this style, this bright, fresh, like right up front lime character, I like the little tiny hint of agave, although it is very subtle. And I love the saltiness here. This is exactly the style of beer I enjoy. I also really like cucumber sours. Like, to a ludicrous degree, I enjoy cucumber sours.
Yes, that's a great idea. We made a cucumber blonde ale 2 summers ago, and it turns out that cucumber is kind of like cilantro. Half of the population really don't like that. Yeah, but it was a great beer, and we sold lots of it.
Oh, got a really great question from Eric. What's your background, Curtis, and what brought you to Situation?
The short answer is my background is I was friends with the owner, and 3 years ago he needed a delivery driver for kegs 1 day a week, which is very hard to try and hire someone for like. Yep. Yeah. So I sort of volunteered to just help out, and then months later our administrative person went on mat leave, and I took over that position. And then after that, we lost our salesperson, moved on to another brewery, and so I took over that as well. And then we replaced myself with the administration role. So yeah, my background is in small business. I've owned a small business for almost 20 years, and so I'm kind of not very good at anything, but I'm pretty good at lots of different things.
Yep, that's fair. I'd be absolutely useless at anything except this. So yeah, I completely feel you.
That's right.
So apart from the obvious pun, Chris asks, wild type fermented, is it a brewing style or reference to the ingredients? Like, are you actually doing full open top cool ship fermenters? Are you buying like a commercially prepared wild yeast strain, or a little bit of both?
Yeah, we're using commercially prepared lactobacillus, right? In a traditional kettle sour. Like, it's very controlled. My first introduction to sours was, like the real wild type sours that were aged, in barrels, and you get all sorts of crazy, funky flavors, right?
Yep.
And I still like those beers, but it's not that easy to do, and it's not that easy to get to market, right? And not everybody is ready for that. So when we started the kettle sour series, that was just like sort of a nod to that style.
Also, I could probably get like 2.5 4-packs of Salty Señorita for a bottle of Cantillon these days. Like, Cantillon prices are insane. I do not have the budget to drink lambic anymore. Not the lambic I want to drink anyway.
Yeah, Cantillon was my start too in the sours. And at first I was repulsed by them, and then I was like, oh, wait, these are really interesting.
Yep. No, I can remember the very first time I tried Cantillon, I had Rosa de Gambrinus, and it was about a 10-year-old bottle on a back deck in Calgary, and it had already gone completely flat. And I honestly had this moment of like, is this genius, or is this guy fucking with me? He just served me like vinegar, and he's just expecting me to spit it out. And it's like, no. Eventually I got around all that, and I discovered what lambic was about. But it's a bit of a steep learning curve with that. Whereas with kettle sour, it's really not. Do you think the market was ready for kettle sours? After the IPA explosion, people were kind of looking for something else, and they were already ready for a stronger flavor? Or do you think that kettle sour had always been kind of waiting in the weeds and it just needed its opportunity?
Yeah, I think that kettle sour was always kind of waiting in the weeds. I think the market is like, it's a good kind of style of beer that introduces not traditional beer drinkers into beer, and also can like kind of bridge the gap between traditional beer drinkers, into something a little bit different, right? So we find it just does it really well with like a lot of demographics, and the market definitely in the last 2 years has gone crazy for them, and there's probably a bit too many of them out there in the market, like for how big our market is right now, but that's okay. That also the trend is for things to come and go very quickly, so it's okay.
Yeah, definitely. Good luck selling a white IPA these days. And that was all the rage 5 years ago.
Yeah. We're a situation where it's sort of like focused on not trying to not chase the trends or be the strangest or the weirdest, because we're based in a brew pub, in a tap room scenario. We kind of want to just keep our brand, making great beer, but not fun and ridiculous necessarily.
Okay. Now, I did promise you no hard questions. That was a lie. So now I'm going to hit you with a hard question. As a retailer trying to sell a Situation, Curtis, why do the Salty Señorita and the Red Ale have the exact same barcode?
The Red Ale and the Salty Señorita?
Yep. the same barcode?
That is a great question, and that is a tough question because you're the first person that's ever told me that.
Yeah, it is actually the same barcode. And we had this happen before with the page turner in another of your seasonals. I forget what it was.
Oh, yeah, that's. I'm just making a note of that. That's definitely us ordering labels and not putting the right things together problem.
Yeah. So, do you want to talk a little bit about your tap room now that we are starting to get a vaccine out there? And I'll make it a two-parter. Let's talk a little bit about your tap room and your space. I am also kind of worried. Every time I hear a forklift in the background, I see you look over your shoulder. I'm worried we're going to have like our first death on camera. Are you just getting horribly mutilated by a forklift? Are you safe? Are you okay hanging out in the warehouse?
I'm safe. I'm safe. Yeah. We're not that big. You can kind of see the brewery a bit here.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
All right, that's probably bigger than a lot of places, but it's not exactly a big space, is it?
No, exactly. This space for many years was a place called Old Strathcona Books. It was like a used bookstore. And now, basically 60% of the space is taken up by the brewery and then 40 by the tap room. And at full capacity, we have over 100 seats, but right now we're at about 50 or less. But our space is quite large, and we're right on the main street called Gateway Boulevard, which would be the opposite of Calgary Trail going south, and just off of White Avenue. So we're full of windows. It's fairly busy place all the time, even now with restrictions. Once we reopened, most hours our tap room's fairly full.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So Eric, or Craig actually is the one who asked, what's your favorite thing on the menu in the tap room? Since you've got the whole full service restaurant and everything, what are you coming in off the street and ordering for yourself on a Wednesday night?
Well, I would say my favorite thing on the menu is the mussels, which is not on the menu at this moment. When we reopened a few weeks ago, we just condensed the menu quite small. Burgers and hop IPA, brined chicken, and some other like main courses, like a vegetarian bowl. But I hear the mussels are coming back next week, so that's a big hit here.
So what I'm hearing is you have like an In-N-Out Burger secret menu thing going on at Situation Brewing.
Yeah, sort of. I don't really have anything to do with the restaurant besides being a customer there. But I know that, we try not to talk too much about the restaurant. We want it to be sort of like that thing that, people come in to drink our beer and then they're surprised by how good our food is. It's sort of like it's the one thing we know we can over deliver on if we don't say anything about it.
That's actually kind of brilliant. I like that. That's great.
Thanks. Yeah. Most breweries can make very good beer.
Very few have decent kitchens.
Very few.
I think that's always been the running joke with Russian River Brewing is if you go for the beer, probably you should eat somewhere else. You're definitely there for the beer. I've been there a dozen times or thereabouts, and yeah. I've had the pizza, I've had the sandwiches, I've had just about everything Russian River does. None of it's any damn good.
Yeah, definitely come to Situation for the soups of the day, for the Situation burger, for the angry mussels or the beer mussels.
Or both. I really like mussels.
Or both. Yeah, it's very good. And, as big of a city Edmonton is, we're still a prairie city, and it's very hard to get mussels in the city. So one of the few places in town that makes them regularly.
Cool. Well, let's move on to the Page Turner IPA. I mean, I'm already onto it, but let's have everybody else move on to the Page Turner IPA here.
All right.
Tell us a little bit about this. It's not hazy. It's that beautiful gold color. I'm feeling a little bit of a West Coast influence here, and that's a very big thing for me. I love me some West Coast IPAs. So.
Oh, good.
Let's talk Page Turner IPA.
Yeah. So the Page Turner was, basically one of our first beers, along with the afternoon tea saison, and that's 4 years ago now, and we were sort of wanting to make something awesome and West Coast, reminiscent of what's the big one out of Vancouver?
Red Racer, probably 5 years ago.
Yeah, Red Racer. Thank you.
Which is not a beer that's aged desperately well. We did kind of a look back through the history of West Coast IPAs. I drank a lot of Red Racer back in the day. I don't think I drink it now. It has not aged desperately well. Yeah,
but we drank a lot of it too. So we wanted to make something that's like totally Northwest style, malty, Citra mosaic hops, lots of fruit, but not afraid of the bitterness of a West Coast style.
Yes, please give me more of that. Yes.
Yeah, exactly, and it's been a hit. It's gone through one change about 2 years ago, just a very slight change to the malt bill. It's very similar to the original thing, and we constantly brew it.
Beautiful. Yeah, this is the one that when we first started bringing your package stuff, we started with the page down there.
Yeah. It's the most popular beer across the province that we sell.
Is that a reference to you like starting in a used bookstore?
That's right.
That's fun.
It's a reference to the bookstore.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. The bookstore was a real staple in Edmonton. It was kind of quite a community place.
Do you still have like a lending library in the tap room sort of thing?
No.
Fair enough. That was probably should have asked that before the video.
It's all good.
So 2 questions from the comments. Actually, a few questions from the comments all of a sudden.
Okay.
Do you have outdoor seating now that things are starting to warm up?
We normally have outdoor seating. We have a patio in front of our building. We don't have it open yet. The city, it changed a lot of the patio regulations during COVID. So we're just navigating what this year is going to look like for the extended patio rules. But we expect to have something as far as a patio open in the next 2 weeks. So, and of course, when the weather first turns this last week, everybody wanted us to have our patio open.
Of course they did, yeah. Because you can just turn that over on a dime, yeah.
It cools off now, and nobody wants to sit outside. So we'll see next week what it's like.
Fair enough. Next question: is there a barley belt? Like, is there a bikeable, walkable like brewery loop in Edmonton for people who might want to come up and not drive, but they want to kind of hit a few breweries?
Yeah, 100% there is. Edmonton is not cool enough to have a name though for it, like Barley Belt. Basically, like from where we are in Old Strathcona, Polar Park is like 2 blocks away, and then if you head east to 99th Street, there's that's becoming really like the whole area where Sea Change, Blind Enthusiasm, the Monolith, Omen Brewing. There's a brand new brewery about to open there, Long Roof Brewing, and I think Bent Stick has got a new space in that same strip. So, and it's all walkable. Sorry?
Like a satellite location?
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be like a bigger location so they can expand their production.
Oh,
and
it's cool.
It's probably, it could be the building that Amber's actually used to have.
And we come full circle.
Exactly. Yeah.
So down here in Lethbridge, I mean, I think a lot of people here are pretty familiar with the Calgary beer scene, but I can't imagine a lot of people are super familiar with Edmonton. Down here we get Situation, we get a lot of SYC stuff. We see a little bit from Sea Change, we see a little tiny bit from Bent Stick, but that's about all we get down here. What's it like brewing beer in Edmonton? What's kind of the local scene like?
The local scene is very strong, like lots of loyal customers to their neighborhood brewery, right? And when we first started in 2016, there was a lot of community started to be built around Situation. So we did a lot of things to like help some other breweries get started, like just with recipes, or some of them we brewed their first beer for them so that they had something to bring to market when they opened their tap room. And like it's a very good scene, but it's not like Calgary. Calgary kind of started a little bit later than Edmonton, but then exploded and just pumped out breweries like crazy, and pumped out a lot of of great product and not so great product, onto liquor store shelves.
Yep.
So that's what, even in Edmonton, some liquor stores you still see like dominated by Calgary breweries.
Really?
So and Edmonton really just hasn't exploded in the same way. We're sort of more like a slow growth.
Okay, because down here we are cut off a little bit from, we're not immune to the Calgary hype train as much, but the Edmonton stuff, for whatever reason, just because it's a long bloody way. We don't get and also, I mean, we don't get some of the seasonals that are, I drive up to Calgary every other week to pick up like small seasonal stuff. I can't do that with Edmonton, or at least I won't do that with Edmonton. Because no, screw that. No, it's a little bit different down here because we very much live in Calgary's shadow. So I'm very curious because I keep hearing that the brewery scene in Edmonton is absolutely amazing, but living this far south, we don't see it that much. So I'm always curious what's going on.
Yeah, there's some really great breweries like doing really great stuff in Edmonton, but it's, if you look at like in the Pacific Northwest where a lot of craft brewing started, years before us, eventually the market kind of gets to a place where it's like your local brewery is in your neighborhood, not necessarily in your city, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and I think some of that bleeds into how we start in Edmonton. Like it's, we've sort of focused a lot on our community first and then spreading throughout the province later.
And I really respect that. I like that you're keeping it local first, and then if there's more beer to sell, then we will send it out. And we've gotten some really cool stuff out of BC because of that. A lot of breweries that normally would never end up in Alberta, like Superflux. Now we get all of a sudden, and it's great. But the second COVID's over, that's gone. So let's enjoy it while we can.
Yeah, we had a really great plan starting in 2016, and the plan actually just doesn't make sense anymore because the pandemic changed everything. So like most small businesses, not just breweries. We're making strategic decisions every couple of weeks.
I never thought I'd be shooting 2 live beer and wine or spirits tastings a week every Wednesday and Friday night. I've been doing that for the last year. Things are different now.
Yeah, and lots of them like this are really great changes. So it's okay, and we're rolling with it, and it seems to be working for us.
And this is what I always wanted to do, was to actually do the education side more than the retail side. I've been standing behind a cash register for, this is my 21st year in this same place. Yeah. I was ready for a little bit of a change. Honestly, the education side's way more fun for me. I love this. This is what I look forward to. Like, I came in this morning and was like, okay, I have 5 hours of bookkeeping. And then we get to shoot 2 promos for the upcoming events, and then I get to stock beer for an hour with someone cool. It's great.
Yeah. It's a nice change of pace from my days of retail as well.
More questions just flooding in. Jeremy asks, are you selling in the Beercade? I don't know the reference, but he did ask it.
I think he's talking about Beercade Revival in Calgary. And sometimes. So I would say not right now. I don't think they have any of our beers right now, but sometimes they bring in something when they want to, bring in some Edmonton stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so we are going to do shameless promotion corner here. So I'll just kind of put you on to one side here, Curtis. We're just going to talk about our next 2 upcoming events. We're going to start up by talking about what we have coming up in just 48 hours on Friday night. We are going to have Mr. Lee Hansen, I think our most regular guest at this point in our pandemic video tasting series. He has been our whiskey tasting guest par excellence, and he's going to be walking us through the different whiskey lines of Andrew Lang and Hunter Lang bottlers. So Hunter Lang has at least 4 different lines. They have a couple more that are really expensive that we can't quite get into without this being a $50 tasting. But they have 4. They have Hepburn's Choice, Old Malt Cask, First Editions, and the Sovereign. We're going to be tasting whiskey each from all of those lines. From Hepburn's Choice, we've got the Tullibardine at 12 years old out of a wine cask. Love this. It's like super accessible and delicious. We have the Blair Athol 15. if you've ever heard Steve Firth talk, you know that Blair Athol is the greatest distillery on planet Earth and everything else he always talks about. It's also pretty good. It's a very angular whiskey. Like it's very structured, and you get a lot of kind of acidity out of it, which is odd for a whiskey. I'm very much looking forward to talking with Lee about that one. Next up, we have McDuff 20-year cask strength from First Editions. The first of the two whiskeys we have that are over 20 years old. McDuff is in market as a standard single malt. They sell it here as the Deveron. And then finally, we have the Sovereign Single Grain. Now, this is from the North British Distillery. Single grain or grain whiskey is usually what they use to cut the single malts when they make something like Grant's or Famous Grouse or Ballantine's or Johnny Walker. Grain whiskey is kind of like the ugly stepsister sort of thing. It's not the sexy part of Scotch. But if you age it very carefully and you start with a decent-ish base spirit, you can come up with something really, really special. And while it's not a big component, it's not even 1% of the actual Scotch market. It's like 0.021 of the actual Scotch industry as a whole. It's a really fun category to play in, just because you can get ludicrously old whiskeys for not a lot of money. That's going to be coming up this Friday night at 6. On the back counter right now, we are currently sold out. Not because we're out of whiskey, not because we didn't try and bottle some today, because I had to order some more bloody bottles from Uline, and they don't show up till tomorrow. So thank you for buying already a double set of the whiskey sets. We are now sold out. I will be making our third set tomorrow in these fun little brown boxes that we do. So you get 4 1-ounce pours for $30. That'll be fun. Next week's beer tasting is, in a sense, kind of 2 beer tastings. 2 different ideas that I wanted to explore, and just, okay, let's start with the obvious thing. I wanted to talk about Love Shack. I've wanted to talk about it for quite a while, because it's a really cool idea. 2 different breweries making the same beer, just on 2 different brewing equipment. It's a hazy passion fruit IPA, one brewed at 88, one brewed at Cabin. But when this came out, I already booked like 5 or 6 weeks of like tastings with people like Curtis and with Jordan from Zero Issue last week, and on and on and on. So this is kind of the last week I could do this, and I really wanted to talk about these 2 beers side by side, so we're going to do that next week. And then Snake Lake has been doing some really fun things with low alcohol, big flavor beers. So we're going to do their Drink Easy low-cal IPA, and then brand new, like just came out this week. They have their Public House Mild Porter. Both beers under 4% alcohol. So we're going to talk a little bit of big flavor at low alcohol stuff. So bit of an odd one next week, bit of a transitional period into the week. The beer tasting is going to come in 2 weeks, which is just going to be straight out, hey, it's warm, spring beers, which of course means that day we're going to get an unseasonal, like late March blizzard, because that's just going to screw me over completely, and that's the way my life works. So that is what is coming up for beer tasting. Wine tasting next Friday is also going to be a little bit of a spring focus. It's going to be just gently easing us into spring with a bit of a wine and cider tasting, and that's coming up as well. So, thank you for bearing with us, Curtis. That was probably very boring for you because you're in Edmonton and won't be attending any of it.
Well, I'm a little jealous because I haven't tried the Love Shack either.
Love Shack's pretty cool. Yeah, I genuinely enjoyed it. So
awesome.
We've had it here for a couple 3 weeks. So yeah, I booked like 6 straight weeks. I think you're our 5th or 6th guest in a row doing like a really cool brewery profile tasting. And then Love Shack came out, and I really wanted to talk about it. And I'd already booked everyone. I was like, well, I'm not gonna like cancel anyone because that's super rude. But I kind of did keep a flat back of the 2 Love Shacks because I wanted to do this. So
yeah.
All right, let's roll straight into Sex Pals. Imperial Stout.
All right.
Also an Imperial Stout in a 4-pack. That is just asking people to get into trouble, including me, because I just realized I poured myself way too much Imperial Stout for being on camera.
It can be a troublesome beer at 10%, but it's delicious.
Okay, so talk to us a little bit about Imperial Stout as a style and Situation's take on the style.
Well, Imperial Stout as a style, if you do some reading on the internet and you believe what things say on the internet, you'll know that like in 17 something, late 1700s, there was a brewery in London that was sending dark ales to Catherine the Great, to Russia, and so they kind of got their name from that, because they had to be strong enough for the travel, and also like good enough to sort of serve the imperial court. So they sort of got their name Imperial Stout, and that's sort of where we got our name, the Sex Palace, because Catherine the Great was legend to be told that she was interested in other things too, and had a palace built for her extracurricular activities.
See, this is why you should be having a beer. That would have been much less professional and much less polite if you were 3 beers deep at this point.
Totally. Yeah. It's definitely our most exciting name, beer.
The Sex Palace. For Catherine the Great's, I just have many captive lovers, Sex Palace. I love it.
Exactly.
Captive's perhaps the wrong word, but they weren't probably actual captives or hostages, but they were lovers.
Right. So yeah, it's a full Imperial Stout, super dark, lots of bittering hops to sort of balance out the sweetness of the alcohol and the extra malt bill. We recommend drinking like it in small doses.
Much smaller
10
than I just pour myself. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. We in the brewery we serve them in a 10-ounce chalice kind of style glass. So we understand that the 4-pack can is dangerous, but we trust people to take care of themselves.
That's fair. I was not worthy of that trust tonight. So I'd actually like to take this in a different direction in terms of history. I mean, we do kind of know the historical old school name for Imperial Stouts, but Imperial Stouts got so important in terms of brewery prestige when the early 2000s came along, and like Rate Beer and Beer Advocate and 35 out of the top 50 beers in the world, I say with all the dripping sarcasm I can, were Imperial Stouts. You almost had to have one to be relevant. And 2016, when you guys launched, that was right at the tail end where that way of thinking was still somewhat relevant. Was that part of why you had to have an Imperial Stout on the menu, or were you just Imperial Stout has to be there because we love Imperial Stout?
No, I think what you're speaking to had us make a barley wine our first year, because that was a traditional style that very serious breweries would make. So we made a barley wine called the Pickled Padre.
Okay.
And it was excellent, but yeah, the Sex Palace was made because our head brewer at the time wanted to make an Imperial Stout.
And I dig it. Like it's got lots of licorice. It's got beautiful like red fruit and blue fruit. It's got nice roasty bitterness. Lots of chocolate. A little bit of vanilla. Almost. Is there oatmeal in this? Because I do pick up like an oatmeal-y sort of character to it.
Yeah, just a little bit of oats in the mash. It kind of changes the mouthfeel too.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Oats, I mean, any high protein thing like oats, it really does add like a certain softness and richness.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
the health benefits of oats is widely exaggerated, but I do like oat stouts. I always have like oatmeal stouts.
I don't think there's much fiber in this one.
No, if I'm having bathroom fun tomorrow morning, it's not going to be because of the oats. It's probably going to be because I spent the afternoon drinking beer.
Right.
What's your favorite situation beer of all time, whether it be core, seasonal? I mean, you guys have done, you got 5 years under your belt like in 2 months here. You've had several seasonals, more than several. What's been your favorite?
That's a very good question. I would have to say my favorite is the Clean Bite. It's our double IPA, which we have on tap, and we mistakenly did not put it into cans in time for the pandemic, but we probably will next winter. It's a page turner turned up a notch. I really dig it.
Is it paler than Page Turner, like that super Lagunitas style, or is it still that big malty, rich style?
It's very malty. It's very big and malty. Just dialed up on the sweetness because of the alcohol, but very well balanced with the hops. It's it's a big beer, and I like that. I got into craft beer like lots of people because of IPAs and hoppy beers, and just trying like what's the next hoppiest and the next hoppiest, and then eventually I fall away from that and try everything else. And
we all tried Mikkeller 1000 IBU, hated it, and decided that IBUs weren't the way to go.
Exactly.
God,
but there's still something nostalgic about that Northwest style that like brings me back, right?
Absolutely.
So I drink a lot of Page Turner. Also, a beer that is available in packaged products called the Bookmark Pale Ale. I really enjoy that beer, and it probably isn't destined to be on the shelves for long, because it's it's a very crowded market, the pale ale category. So we just wanted to put one out there, and it did well in the tap room and not as well on the shelf because it blends in with 600 other pale ales. But it's also like has that crisp mosaic citra hop. There's some Sabro in it too, but in a toned down alcohol version. So those three hoppy beers are the ones I drink the most.
I get that. And is that still a West Coast style pale ale, or I'm hearing Simcoe and Mosaic and Sabro, and I'm feeling like those are three very stereotypically East Coast hops, but it's done in a West Coast style. I like that.
Done in the West Coast style. That's right. Yeah.
Have you dipped your toes at all into the hazy styles, or is it just like nope, West Coast, Best Coast, none of this nonsense?
Well, we're not hard and fast on anything. We're working on our first Northeast style IPA. So, sometime in the next 6 to 8 weeks, hopefully we'll have something put out. But it's got to be just right. We really didn't want to jump on that train for a long time, and not because we don't like the style, but just that we really love the Northwest style. And we wanted to just sort of stay true to who, the kinds of beers that we were making. We don't want to just jump after the next thing, but it's very clearly obvious that hazy New England style IPAs are not just a fad, and some of them are faddish.
They're faddish, but I think that West Coast IPAs have become almost just retro cool again, and I absolutely love that. I do think that the lower bitterness and more fruitiness and just greater accessibilities of the hazies have brought more people into the IPA tent, and I'm all for that. But I had a East Coast IPA, won't name names, because this is actually a brewery I like. I'm completely unafraid to name names when it's people I don't like. But this particular brewery made an East Coast IPA that was very reminiscent of like Rickard's White, and I was like, nope, that's too far. That's a bridge too far. We need more West Coast stuff.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate that the lower bitterness of these hazy IPAs has brought more people into the IPA conversation that we can then flip into West Coast converts, as is, proper and orthodox, where they should be.
I like that idea a lot. Yeah. It's okay to make a great beer that brings not traditional craft beer drinkers into the fold, but without totally selling your soul.
I really respect that. Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. So, no spoilers, of course, but I do happen to notice you guys have a 5th anniversary coming up in a couple of months here. Do we have anything that? Okay. Down here in Lethbridge, is there going to be anything we're going to see in terms of like a 5th anniversary beer coming up?
Oh, well, you give us a lot of credit for planning ahead.
Far more credit than I give myself, yes.
Yeah.
What am I doing for the beer tasting in May? Bloody hell if I know. I didn't remember St. Patrick's Day next week.
Exactly. Yeah, we're working on quite a few different beers at the same time. We'll definitely be putting out another version of the Afternoon Tea Saison, and a new version of the WTF, or a re-release of the Salty Señorita. We haven't decided. And then there's probably 3 other categories that were in the experimental stage, like the New England IPA. So we'll see. I don't know, but it's a good idea. 5th anniversary.
Just gonna check for questions that I maybe missed. Oh, this is a great one from Eric, actually. Has this been in barrels? And I'll add that onto that. Do you have a barrel program?
It has not been in barrels. We don't have a barrel program. Barrel programs are awesome and expensive.
Really expensive.
And take up a lot of space. And no matter how big you build your brewery, you tend to just fill it up. And we just don't have the space for that. And it's still a good idea for the future, but we'd have to work out the logistics of that. So not as of yet. With the barley wine, we did actually age a bunch of kegs like a whole year. And then release it again, and that was actually really interesting to try the same beer like a year later, but those were not barrel aged; they were just cold stored in kegs.
No, I love aging kegs. We actually on our growler bar, we either are right at the tail end of or just poured the last of keg of 2017 Brewster's Blue Monk barley wine, which is tasting really on point for a Brewster's beer.
Yes.
I genuinely like that beer anyway.
Yeah.
I also want to point out, Sean, no, I did not mutilate this can. That was Mike who dropped it as he was taking it to the fridge. So for those who don't know, the beer tasting cans that sit on the bar here, those are kind of like the advertisement for what we have coming up next. So when you walk in, you can look to your left, you're like, oh, what are the next 2 tastings? There's 4 scotches here, 4 beers here. You can kind of assess whether you're interested or not on what's coming up. These were sitting on the bar all week, and then Mike was taking them to the fridge for me for tonight so I could have them cold, and immediately dropped them. So yes, this is my can of Sex Palace Imperial Stout. It's seen better days. It did not show up like this. This is not Curtis or Situation's fault. This is entirely Mike's fault. So like most things.
Hopefully none of your testers got cans like that.
No, this was just mine. Unlike Tofino 2 weeks ago, actually, a whole bunch of their cans showed up super mutilated and mangled, which is a shame.
Oh, it's no good.
Sex Palace, yeah. Well, the name? We did talk about the name. Catherine the Great, Many Lovers.
Yeah,
we got
Many Lovers. Yeah, it's very Imperial.
Settles into cherries, coffee, and vanilla. I definitely get cherries and coffee. I'm looking for the vanilla now. Yeah, I can see vanilla in the mouth, not so much in the nose. I can see why you asked if this might be barrel aged, because the vanilla is very, very intense in the mouth.
Sometimes you get those vanilla notes when the sweetness factor is turned up a little bit.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think we will wrap things up there. Thank you very much, Curtis. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No,
it was much better than I expected.
Well, it would have been even more fun if you're having beers with us. You would have gotten so much on topic, started taking random shots at Alley Cat, gotten horribly in trouble, woken up fired tomorrow. It would have been great. More for me than you. But
next time there's an opportunity next time.
Darn right there is. Awesome. Have a wonderful night, Curtis. Thank you so much for doing this.
Okay, thanks for having me.
Take care.
Goodbye.
All right, and that was the absolutely fantastic Curtis Weber from Situation Brewing. You can join me next week, same time, same day, for our kind of 2-part beer tasting where we have Love Shack and low alcohol Snake Lakes. It's a bit of a transitional one because we're just getting into spring beers, but I really, really wanted to do Love Shack. That's the topic of next week. Is Kyle really wanted to do Love Shack and had to find 2 other beers that were vaguely on the same topic, so I chose those 2. I'm pretty open about that because that's exactly what it is. In the meantime, I'm Kyle. This has been Aaron, the always wonderful Aaron.
Thanks.
And enjoy the rest of your Wednesday night. And I am going to enjoy the rest of this salty Señorita because that's absolutely fantastic. Take care of yourselves. Good night. As well as the salty Señorita. Tequila, salty as well as lime goza. Hey folks, Kyle with Andrew Hilton here. Going to tell you about our upcoming beer tasting Wednesday, March 10th.